Good afternoon and welcome to another session. And today I am focusing on something we'll do this whole month. That would be communication skill. Communication is so important. It's so important in many ways, and especially today where we live in a world that communication is different than it was. So I want to focus today on the journey of mastering communication. The next 4 lessons will connect us with the different communication skills, whether it's digital, live, in person, or even a video conversation. Let me start with the foundation of effective communication. So in today's session, I will focus on the foundation of effective communication and everything to do with that. Every session for December, I will recommend a book if you are interested in communication skill and improving your communication skills. And at the end of the month, I will choose one book to review. Of course, Dale Carnegie is always a choice when it comes to communication skills. There are so many books that I read, but his always stands out. He has 2 books. How to Win Friends and Influence People is definitely one, but he also has a book on communication skill. The one, in addition to that, if you read this, then that's great. But in addition to that, I want to recommend Crucial Conversation Tools. Tools for talking when stakes are high. There are several authors: Carrie Patterson, Joseph Granny, Ron McMillan, and Al Zwitzler. These are the 4 authors of that book. Extremely meaningful. It explains how communication is effective, how you can adjust to be a more effective communicator. And if you spend the time to read that, and if you want me to review this, I will be more than happy to do that. Otherwise, I'll just choose one that I find best for review based on the 4 different pillars of communication that I will be focusing on. So everybody thinks that communication is just how they communicate, but it's really, we all think we're communicating well. We all think we said the best that we could. We all feel that our communication was the most effective, but there are really skills that make a communication more effective of one individual versus the other. So today I want to go over those communication skills, and hopefully that would empower you to be more clear and have very impactful and meaningful communication. There are 2 main forms of communications: verbal and nonverbal. So you don't really have to say something to communicate what you want to say. And I'm going to focus on that shortly. Why is it so important, and what's the foundation of effective communication? Because this is your key to relationship. When you have any relationship, whether it's a coworker relationship, a relationship between parents and children, a relationship between friends, family members, anything has to do with sharing you with others. You are sharing the words you're saying, you choosing the words. If you're not choosing them correctly, they can have impactful consequences. So the foundation of effective communication is really how you present yourself to others, but also how you let others present themselves to you and what you do to accept their presentation. I've divided this into 5 major modules, 5 important ways to communicate. And the first one is active listening. We've talked about active listening before. It's really when you are fully dedicated, concentrating, and really responding to whoever is saying what to you. You're basically listening, and not just listening, but also actively listen. So there are 2 forms of listening: active and passive. Passive is when you just listen and you have no facial reaction to whatever you listen. It's not even clear if you understand or follow what the other person is saying. And there's certain things that we can do to show the other person that you are engaged in the conversation. In active listening, you are showing and allowing yourself to truly connect with the other person through listening to what they have to say. So I want to focus on the different parts and techniques of active listening. So first of all, give your full attention. I'm sure a lot of us familiar, especially in today's world, that when you talk to someone and that someone is just glancing at their phone and they're listening to you, but they're really not listening to you. So that's something very common in today's world. So when you want to be the active listener, make sure all distractions are away. There's no phone that's distracting you, that you are maintaining eye contact, you're looking at the person speaking to you, and you avoid interrupting the person when they speak. Very important to let the person just say what they're trying to say. The second thing is to show interest. If you're just listening and you're looking at a person, nod your head, smile if it's something you like. Use your face to express your engagement in the conversation. Our facial expressions can really reveal a lot. They can reveal if you're interested, if you're shocked, if whatever your feeling is towards what the person is telling you. Number three, paraphrasing and summarizing. This is a very useful technique. You're basically rephrasing whatever you heard to the person to make sure you understand correctly. It's sort of a mirroring. You're telling the person what you heard, and you can just confirm, is that right? Do I understand that correctly? You just said this and that. Is that what you mean? Like really summarizing the point of the conversation, just to show the person that you are engaged and you're actually listening to what they're saying. You're understanding their concerns or whatever they're telling you about. Asking clarifying questions. Sometimes something is unclear. Don't just assume. Don't just understand by understanding what you think it meant. If it's unclear, ask. Ask and clarify exactly what is meant. Avoid judging an assumption. Similarly to clarifying, ask questions. Don't judge and don't estimate and don't assume that something happened without actually clarifying that. Practice empathy. We're going to cover empathy in one of the modules, but that's really important. It's when you show emotional connection. It puts yourself, you put yourself in the shoes of the other. You try to feel what they feel. And sometimes it is very hard to do. But when you do that, you become a little bit more empathic and therefore much better listener. Reflect on your own thoughts and feelings. At the end, if you want to say something and you want to point out what you understand from the conversation or be part of the conversation, you can just say your personal understanding, feeling, thought without being biased, without having some kind of a feeling towards what you're saying. So active listening can take place in a lot of different ways. It's, of course, has to be an in-person communication, whether video communication or a face-to-face communication. You can't be an active listener when you're texting. Okay, so texting is another form of communication, but to be an active listener, you really have to engage in a face-to-face conversation. The second module, clarity and expression. And expression is really when you express your thoughts and ideas. As I mentioned before, you want to be clear on what you understand. So you first don't want to assume, but you also want to make sure that the message that was conveyed towards you is the message that is intended to be conveyed. I want to point out how you can be clear when you are communicating with someone else. When you're communicating, and when you have to communicate, whether you're writing or speaking, trying to get an idea across to the other person, organize your thoughts. Make sure that before you speak or you write, you take a minute to write down the ideas of what it is that you want to discuss or what it is that you want to convey. By doing that, you're organizing your thoughts so you know exactly what you're saying and you're not sidetracked to something else. Use a concise language. Choose words that are really clear and not something that is unclear in terms of what the word can mean. because that can take away from your clarity of your message. Be mindful of your audience. Use the correct language to make sure that the person listening to you actually understands you. And I have a very funny example, just I think it was yesterday. I had a student who just shared with me that they have a pet, and I said, "Are you helping maintaining the pet?" I think I said something like that. Do you help your parents to maintain the cat or something like that? The child is 10-year-old, and he looks at me and says, "What does the word maintain means?" So really important that you use words that clearly understood by the person listening to you. And I should have understood that he might not know what that word means. And of course, I explained the word and I changed the sentence. But that's when you're clear on communication and you're right and you really know and prepare yourself, you can avoid those use of terminology of things that may not be understood by the person listening. Provide examples and illustrations. If you're trying to show something specific and it's easier to explain via example, go ahead and do it. Examples are sometimes easily remembered, much better than instructions, much better than other ways of communication. A good example, like I just told you with a student, would be memorable because you have a clear understanding of what exactly it's meant, is meant. Seek feedback. You want to make sure that the communication is between the two of you. So it's important that you listen to what feedback the other person has to say. If the individual understands you, if they want to clarify something, maybe there's something they can suggest or improve. Of course, it all depends on what type of communication it is, but you want to engage both parties of the communication. Edit and revise, especially for written conversations. If you're writing something to someone, reread it, revise it. And I don't remember which book I read it in, but if you write something and you read it and it doesn't sound like something you would like to receive, don't send it. Because especially in a text message, it's so hard to communicate, especially if you say something that is hurtful. Avoid that when possible, or revise it or make it a little bit softer so it's more clear and more concise and no hidden interpretations could be there. Effective communication is really a skill. It definitely takes time to develop, and as you practice you can learn, because you want to avoid misunderstandings. You want to make sure that your intended message is actually received by the person you are speaking with. The third one is building empathy. So as I mentioned before, you want to make sure you show the person that you understand them, that you share their feelings, that you empathize with them. And it's a very important and meaningful communication skill. It gives you the bond between you and the person that you're speaking with to show that you actually understand them. So when you do that, it helps to include the following. So first of all, understand others' perspective. Try to put yourself in their shoes. Try to see the world from their point of view. If somebody tells you something that hurts them or hurted them, or they're telling you a story about something that happened to them, put yourself in that position. Don't judge from where you are. Judge from where they are. Sometimes you may not understand what they are telling you until you put yourself in that position. Validation and support. Empathy actually involves validation of the other person's emotions. When you tell them you understand them, they feel safe. They will feel safe to tell you because you're not judging them, because you are supporting them. And that strengthens any relationship. If your child came to you to tell you something that happened in school and you're being very open and understanding to what happened, instead of judging them and telling them, you should have done this or you should have done this, or if I were you, I would have done this. this actually doesn't help building trust. What helps building trust is accepting what the person tells you and not giving your advice to do something based on how you would do it, but actually understand what the person telling you went through. Emotional connection, it allows you to bond with the individual. When you actually emphasize and empathize, and understand what the person have been through, that connection is meaningful. If somebody tells you a hurtful story they've been through, and instead of judging them or telling them something hurtful, you just sympathize and empathize with them, that builds a strong relationship. Empathy also helps with conflict resolution. If you're trying to, let's say, bring two people to peace and you're listening to both sides, but you show them that you empathize with each of them in their own way. You try to show them that their emotions and their perspectives are not ignored, are not neglected. You're trying to see everything from their own eyes. It's pretty much a repetition, but these are different tools of how you can work through empathy. That can help a conflict resolution. Even if you are, let's say, in a conversation with someone that you are clearly on different pages, you're not understanding each other. A best way to conflict resolution is to say, I understand how you feel, but this is how I feel. You don't have to agree. You can agree to disagree, but as long as it's very soft and understanding towards the other person, it builds that trust. Building bridges, it basically breaks all boundaries, barriers between two individuals. It allows you to connect to a person, even if that person is so different than you, just because you feel this compassion, because you feel this understanding. And once this is built, the relationship becomes so much stronger. So building empathy is a great communication tool. Remember, it's a skill, again, just like any other skill, that you just have to practice. It's not easy to empathize with something that you just don't understand, but practice will make it perfect. Nonverbal communication. So we have two forms of communication. Like I said, these are the words you say. That would be one type of communication, but you can also communicate without words. I often say it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And you can say it with words, but you can also say it with your physical expressions, with your hands, with your body language. And that goes a long way. Let's talk about the different expressions. Facial expression, again, that's important for face-to-face, even if it's a video call. When you smile, when you change your facial expression, you can really express a lot through what you're understanding. When you raise your eyebrows, that means you're surprised. When you smile, you accept what they're saying. When you have a sad face, it's because you're empathizing with what the person is sharing with you. Very important. Facial expressions are read, and when the individual speaks to you, as the person speaks to you, they look at your facial expression to see that you're actually following them. It's the same the other way around. When you speak to someone, your facial expression is analyzed by that person listening to you. Eye contact, very important. If it's on a camera or if it's a face-to-face, that shows engagement. It's a nonverbal skill, but it shows that you are part of this conversation. You're not looking around, you're not looking at your phone, you're not writing something, you're really following what the person is saying. Posture, your hand movement, how you present yourself, how you sit, whether you're sitting straight forward when you're on a video call, if you're sitting confidently. These are all little things that you can actually communicate without communicating words. Tone of voice. When you listen to a tone, it also tells you what the feeling of that person is. If they're upset, they have a different tone of voice. whether if they're happy, they have a different tone of voice. If they tell you something very, very exciting, you'll hear that on their tone of voice. So tone of voice is another way that you can understand what the person is saying. Very important thing is number 5, especially for video calls and when you are in a meeting of any sort. You want to make sure that if you're in a video, you are always in a neat place. If you have your bed right behind you and it's unmade, that is a little bit, attention seeking, because you can definitely look at it and say, oh, that's a mess. It's something that even when you don't want to judge someone, it's the first thing that a person sees. So make sure that you have nice surroundings. It doesn't have to be a museum. It doesn't have to be crystal clear, but when it's a little bit organized, make sure that it's professional, depending what type of meeting you're having. If you are having a work meeting, sit in a table, make sure that it's very much visible that you are in a sitting environment, that you're in an environment that engages your work. So that is another important thing. Reaction features. So when you have a reaction in text, your different emojis mean something. And sometimes we may not know what the emoji means, but it means something completely different than what we meant. Make sure that you know what you're using. Make sure that you know that what you sent is what you meant to send. That is very, very, very important. And the last one is effective collaboration. This is definitely important for teamwork. When you work with a group, you want to enhance productivity. Productivity is enhanced when you are clear and cohesive in your communication. And there's so much more to say about that, but I think I have one more presentation that talks about collaboration and how you can effectively communicate in a group, especially in a work environment. So I'll save that for later this month. If you have any questions at all regarding communication, please feel free to address your questions, send them to me. As always, I will always be happy to respond. And until our educational journey crosses again, always remember that learning is a gateway to a brighter future. Looking forward to see you all next week. Bye.